Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I'm going live about now. I am live as I promised, though unfortunately, I had hoped that today would be the day Apple officially announces the iPhone SE 4. But alas, that's not to be. Probably happening next week. We do have obviously some news to react to from yesterday because not only did Apple slash Beats by Dre announce the Powerbeats Pro 2, but we already have the reviews for it. So it was one of those types of launches, right? The kinds of launch that Apple really doesn't do for the iPhone, the iPad, the Mac. Usually they prefer to show something off, be it on their newsroom page or preferably during an event, right? And then they'll give like a week of pre orders. And then right before a product officially releases into the hands of consumers, 2-3 days before that, reviewers will usually be able to post reviews. Now, with Beats, apparently Apple just thinks it's all a little bit less important. So we got the announcement for the Powerbeats Pro yesterday, and with it also a bunch of reviews. I would like to react to 2 of those today, and we'll talk briefly about the state of future Apple announcements. And by future, I mean the very, very short-term future, because there is a chance we might be seeing some announcement regarding Apple Vision Pro, the MacBook Air in the next coming weeks, and the iPhone SE 4 next week. So let's tackle it all. Riveting Tail Chap joining in the chat saying, "Good morning, good sir. Well, for me, it's 6 p.m. I had a horrible train ride today. I was visiting family over a long weekend, and like I got the worst headache. I've taken some ibuprofen and shit like that. Doesn't help. So this will be a shorter stream, but it's still going to be lively and energetic. I am healthy, so whatever I had last week, that has been cured. But yeah, German trains are not what they used to be. That's I'll leave it at that, right? So let's start with the state that we're at, right? So yesterday, on February 11th, we got the Powerbeats Pro 2s and the reviews. Powerbeats Pro 2 costs $250. They launch with the H2 chip that has been powering the AirPods Pro 2 for quite a while now, has been introduced to the AirPods 4 last year. Famously has not been introduced to the refreshed AirPods Max, which still run on the H1 chip. So you you really got to ask yourself where Apple's priorities are if the $550 AirPods Max does not have it, but the Beats device does have it. They get noise cancellation, transparency mode, all that stuff that comes from the tight integration with Apple's ecosystem. They move away from Lightning to USB-C. But again, I'm not here to present you the individual spec points. You can read up on that as much as you want. Obviously, Powerbeats Pro or Apple's more fitness-oriented earbuds. This is why they have these ear hooks. Obviously, being like substantially larger than your average AirPod, this allows them to also have longer battery life. But also famously, the last Powerbeats Pro, the first generation, was also very clunky, very large. So Apple made both the buds and the case a lot smaller while still improving battery life. So whatever they're pulling off here with the H2 chip definitely seems to work. Riveting Tail Chap saying, "I'm glad to see you're better and hope you heal from the headache soon." Well, guys, keep me entertained with your comments. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, share that with anybody who you think might enjoy it. Leave a small donation in the form of a super chat or a super sticker. Consider becoming a channel member right here on YouTube. There are a lot of ways to interact with me, the community, becoming part of it, becoming a direct supporter. However you choose to do that, I appreciate it. And every little bit of interaction increases my mood and cures my headache. So I already see, by the way, that my OBS seems to have frame drops for some reason. So it really seems like it's really the upload speed for me at home that is suffering. because I did not have that while I was visiting family, and I'll definitely try fixing it, but I really cannot. I might just try to use the 5G from my iPad, but please bear with me. It might be another week or so with these technical issues. I really hope that by the time the iPhone SE4 launches, which I assume will be my biggest stream in a little while, I hope it gets fixed by then. And because these are fitness-oriented earbuds, they also feature for the first time in an Apple a pair of headphones heart rate monitoring. Now, to anybody who might be an Apple Watch user, that might not seem like the most attractive option, but because you already have even more superior heart rate monitoring in your Apple Watch, and you have other features, of course, like ECGs, blood oxygen measuring, temperature measuring, all that stuff, right? But especially if you're outside the Apple ecosystem or you don't own an Apple Watch in general, it's definitely a nice to have. And hey, if you're an Apple Watch user, sometimes you might forget your Apple Watch, to forget to charge it or forget to just put it on. Now you have that feature in your Powerbeats Pro. Or if you have your Apple Watch on you, you can just basically ignore it, and your earbuds will give you slightly better battery life than they would have given you otherwise. Did I upgrade to M4 Max for OBS now? Well, no, it's unfortunately, it's very, very definitely a Wi-Fi issue for me at home. I might get like an adapter. I have no idea if it might be the Wi-Fi itself, but yeah, it's really, really specific to like frame drops in OBS. Like, I don't really see my upload speeds cratering that much, but it also has to do with, like, I live in a multi-apartment house, so at 6 p.m. during a workday, that's when people will usually come home, and with that, they will fuck up the internet for everyone else. So yeah, that's pretty unfortunate. I mean, that's what I'm doing too, right? If somebody is like upload dependent in my apartment complex, right, and I stream at like my 6 or 7 p.m. because that's when I usually come back home, yeah, I'm probably gonna be screwing up their connection too. So that's very briefly about Powerbeats Pro. I'm actually pretty interested in the reviews. I did obviously pre-watch this stuff to give you some very interesting counterpoints to it. I can spoil it. I definitely agree more with one side than the other. That has everything to do not with just some blind Apple fan stuff, but I have actually owned Powerbeats. So before Powerbeats Pro, there was just Powerbeats, right? They were not in a case. They were basically connected over a wire, the left and right earbud. But they did have those hooks, and they did have physical buttons. And this is why back in the day, before Apple introduced AirPods Pro, I preferred my Powerbeats over getting regular AirPods. So I'm somebody who might not get a Powerbeats buds again, because AirPods Pro exist at this point, and they get all these cool features way earlier, and sometimes still better even years later. But yeah, if we didn't get AirPods Pro, you would be betting your ass that I would be buying these. And this is why I do have some mild criticism towards those who are pretty negative towards them for very little reason, in my opinion. Now, speaking of all the announcements that I promised would be coming, this is primarily coming from Mark Gurman, of course. So yesterday, he promised us that today we would get a small announcement from Apple. We did. It's pretty small, relatively. It's pretty interesting to me, probably not very relevant to most people. It is US specific, so I cannot benefit from it. But as somebody who works in the medical field myself, it is pretty interesting nonetheless. And with all of that, Mark Gurman also, of course, talks about the upcoming iPhone SE4, right? So the iPhone SE4 is expected by next week. And this Friday, we should be getting some Apple Vision Pro announcements. though we have no idea which specific ones. We know from Mark Gurman, and we have covered it on this channel, that Apple is working on support for PlayStation Sense controllers, the controllers that are made for the PlayStation VR2 headset, that those would become compatible with, for Apple Vision Pro to basically improve its gaming prowess. That could be one thing. Apple could maybe give Apple Vision Pro some Apple Intelligence support, because despite having an M2 chip, and obviously Apple Intelligence on Macs is supported from M1 and higher, and despite having 16 gigabytes of RAM, with Apple Intelligence running on devices that have 8 gigabytes or more RAM, Apple Vision Pro does not support any form of Apple Intelligence. My idea was always that Apple is holding it back, if they ever bring it to the original Apple Vision Pro, is that they're holding it back before they can better integrate visual intelligence, right? This is the feature on iPhone where you use camera control to basically bring something that is very similar to Google Lens. It reads the text you're looking at, it analyzes the object you're looking at, it integrates even with ChatGPT for that kind of analysis, and then of course it allows you to copy paste, write in the system. If you see an address, you can open the Maps app. If you see a phone number, you can call it right away, right? All those very understandable, like system level shortcuts almost. So I could see either of those two small things happening. And of course, there has been rumor that that Apple Vision Pro would be getting a successor, but we've been mostly rumoring it for like next year. Supposedly an M5 based Apple Vision Pro. Now, could it launch as a surprise February thing in 2025 before N3P even hits the needed production numbers? I very much doubt that, but I put it actually in the title of this video because I've seen people try to suggest that. Now, if it happens that we get Apple Vision Pro 2 this week, which would be a weird way to announce it, I assume there would be two things about it. First, it will get the M4 chip rather than an M5 chip. And unless M5 is somehow still based on TSMC's N3 node. But even more importantly, I would argue that it's very likely to keep the same design as Apple Vision Pro 1. So while, yes, Apple is most likely working on a slimmer, lighter, potentially a version of Apple Vision Pro that allows it to be cheaper, maybe by removing a feature like eyesight, I don't really see Apple going out of their way in 2025, like basically a little bit over a year after Apple Vision Pro came out, to replace it fully with a new design. Like, I mean, it has happened before. Obviously, iPhone 3G had a noticeably different design than the original iPhone. The iPad 2 famously was a lot thinner, a lot lighter than the original iPad, had a big performance boost with the A5 chip versus the A4 chip. But we have not heard about the potential of a redesigned Apple Vision Pro coming as early as this year, especially early in the year. So this is why I'm pretty apprehensive about that. And again, my whatever is happening, I have like 5% frame drops. I apologize so much for that. Thank you to anyone who is pushing through. I'll try working on it. Maybe I'll order myself like an Ethernet adapter or something like that. But yeah, unfortunately, I just cannot do anything about it right now. Wait. Yeah, I might try to stream next stream through the 5G of my iPad, but I don't want to switch right now. I think that will probably just cause OBS to crash. It hates changing like connectivity in between the stream. Yeah, but that's about it for the stuff that we are getting in the near-term future. The MacBook Air M4, according to Mark Gurman, even though he kind of alluded to it last week by saying that iPad Air and MacBook Air supply is running low, now he is saying M4 MacBook Air is coming within weeks, which technically, I mean, if you count it up to like 6-7 weeks, maybe 8. At that point, it would put it into an April release, an early April release, which would line up with some of the earlier stuff that Mark Gurman talked about. But then again, he did predict for a while now that iPhone SE4 will come in April, right? So the fact that iPhone SE4 is seemingly coming next week, maybe like by February 18th or 19th, right? It suggests that either he got something wrong or some internal plans at Apple have changed. So however you want to look at it, we'll probably never know. But yeah, this is why I do cover like regular updates to leaks and rumors, because if we don't, we'll just like, if I come back once a month or once every 2 months, then we'll just be screwed and we'll be operating on completely different levels of information. So this is why I try to do my streams at least once a week, more like 2 or 3 times. Yeah, and with that, now we've actually covered everything that is really worth covering. So that small announcement that Mark Gurman promised would be coming today did come. You can activate it basically as part of Apple's research app in the United States, and it's a holistic health study that basically is designed to integrate with Apple's ecosystem of hardware. It's cooperating with the Harvard Medical School. And basically Apple's idea is that they're trying to bring, thanks to the integration with their ecosystem, many more participants to the idea of getting like into health studies, right? Because as somebody, again, who works in the medical field himself, it's really difficult to get the right subjects for every study you might want to run. It can get really expensive, especially if you have to motivate people to stay and shit like that. So yeah, I'm very, very happy that Apple is definitely contributing a lot to the medical field here. The Apple Health Study builds on learnings from the Apple Women's Health Study, the Apple Hearing Study, and the Apple Heart and Movement Study. So Apple is definitely not entering this as like a complete novice. This new longitudinal virtual study aims to understand how data from tech, including Apple and third-party devices, can be used to predict, deter, detect, monitor, and manage changes in participants' health. Additionally, researchers will explore connections across different areas of health, which my assumption is that this basically collects all your health data, and then based on what kind of disease you might develop later on, or just looking at your age and demographic group, right, they'll just try to make predictions. I'm not sure how it integrates with like potentially getting questions about your diet, but I mean, technically you could even have like your exercise routine directly integrated, right? And that's why, according to Apple, this study spans a number of health and disease areas, including activity, aging, cardiovascular health, circulatory health, cognition, hearing. I mean, cognition makes sense. Apple does have like their mindfulness app, and they do encourage like mental health practices. So hearing, with all of the stuff they've now built into like AirPods Pro 2, for example, menstrual health, mental health, metabolic health. Again, you can combine certain metrics that Apple already uses in, for example, their fitness apps, mobility, neurological health, which would be interesting the way they handle this, because that would definitely require a lot of like semi-regular feedback to understand the neurological health of the person partaking in the study. Respiratory health, again, they do have oxygen data, sleep tracking data from the Apple Watch, and more. So my assumption is, and unfortunately I cannot confirm to you that because I do not have the research app, nor am I in the United States, but you will either give them basically all your health data, or whatever like subset of data they ask you for, and then they can basically try to bring it into certain context, whatever like ideas they might have, right? That's pretty cool. It's rare that you get a really like cross-sectional understanding of a lot of people, and then also in various ways, right? Usually if you have a lot of people, you'll focus on like very specific things, like for example cardiovascular health, and you'll just get like thousands of people, but each with like 2-3 data points that you then update semi-regularly, having potentially that many people, but now for so much more data, that's actually pretty cool. So yeah, I just wasn't gonna not mention that. Again, I know even according to Mark Gurman, this is a smaller announcement from Apple, but I have praised them in the past for their integration with medical tech and shit like that. So I just thought it would be kind of weird if I didn't talk about it a little. But of course, the main topic of this week thus far has been the announcements of Powerbeats Pro 2, Apple's kind of premier workout earbuds. They do own Beats by Dre. They often do not control it as much these days. At least it appeared to me that way. Like they launched quite a few headphones in recent years that run on their own chips, right? But Powerbeats Pro 2 is running on Apple's H2 chip. That gives it supreme integration into the Apple ecosystem, fast pairing and device switching on iOS, all the personalized spatial stuff, spatial audio stuff that Apple is really keen on. So, and of course, Apple's mind-boggling lead in certain things like transparency mode, for example, they are powered by the power of their H series processors. So to me, it's very interesting to finally see that, like a newer version of that chip, all those capabilities like transparency mode, ANC, personalized spatial audio in a piece of hardware that is technically not Apple. So let's see what reviewers have to say about it, starting with Marques Brownlee, the MKBHD himself, probably the largest relevant tech channel on the planet for stuff like this. So let's get started.
So, little known secret, but before a new piece of tech comes out, a lot of tech companies do what's called a pre-brief, which is basically where they'll show the new unreleased piece of tech to a bunch of journalists and tech media and explain everything that's new, and with a little bit of marketing flair too.
True.
And I've done my best to never...
They give like I've heard like people really try to create conspiracy theories around it, like who gets invited to those pre-briefings. You get like technically like review guidelines. Those guidelines mainly are about informing you what's actually new in the product, right? So otherwise you might not always know what even to test out. So I've never seen like big corruption happening from any of that, be it on Apple's side or in Samsung's side. I do find it obviously sometimes questionable which specific like influencers a company will invite, and the way that coverage works, usually companies will encourage you to test shit. For example, like on the PC side, NVIDIA will really, really like you to use like DLSS 4 frame generation to testing RTX 5000 series. But except for that one case with Hardware Unboxed, where they tried to block them a few years ago for not being very kind to ray tracing testing, usually companies will be fine if you go very much outside the review guidelines. So again, we should keep companies accountable when they do shady shit, and we should definitely hold content creators accountable to stay neutral, to stay informed, not make their reviews lazy, not like read basically out from the review guidelines that they got. But whenever I hear people like, oh, Apple chosen media and shit like that, and I see like Samsung inviting influencers who only talk about Samsung, and people who will basically like celebrate just the fact that the event is happening, right? They will like glorify like every little bit, every little thing happening. And I'm not saying that does not happen on Apple's side too, but whenever I hear, for example, from LTT, that was like a talking point they had a few years ago, that they were not like in the day one reviewers for iPhones, Macs, and other Apple hardware, because Apple does not choose that as part of the Apple chosen media. But my understanding is that if you are a relevant enough YouTuber and you show actually a commitment to provide day one reviews, which by the way, like LTT might not do day one reviews, but like for Apple hardware. But when even confronted with like reviewing the iPhone 16 Pro Max or whatever, where is that stuff, right? We're so many months into that. It's not like you got the product day one once it got into stores. Yes, you didn't get it like a week earlier, but really you need to wait indefinitely. So this is the one thing why I always be like, yeah, you don't act like a traditional review outlet. This is why, even if you are more positive or negative, doesn't matter, like tech companies might not be as fond of you as like The Verge or Engadget, right? Because they have an entire production schedule around delivering day one reviews. They have an audience that is very broad, like LTT, for as big as they are, a lot of their audience is very much PCMR, right? They either focus on PC or they actually actively dislike Apple because Apple is not PC. So yeah, again, there's a whole lot of controversy around all of this. So I just wanted to, like, it's not a recent thing. It has been like following especially Apple for years, and nobody has ever been able to prove anything. So thank you, Marquez, for just briefly mentioning it. It's a topic I haven't addressed yet, I think, on this channel, at least not much. So I was glad to be briefly talking about it.
Quote these pre-briefings, and I'll do my best with my own testing and observations to make my own video. But I'm going to break that rule just for this real quick, because I was on the briefing for the new Apple headphones, or new Powerbeats, and they said something that I thought was really interesting. They said that the Powerbeats Pro are the most popular, best-selling headphones in the world. Now, I have not been able to verify this.
I assume they mean in their class. Like, we know AirPods rule those categories, and they are like even cheaper Chinese brands, like where you'll get like decent quality for like 30-40 bucks, where some companies will charge you 150 to 100 for. Those will definitely still outsell something by unit count, like any Beats by Dre product, in my opinion.
I have no way that I've found to confidently check those exact sales numbers, but if I was guessing,
I bet this came like with an asterisk on the PowerPoint, and the person presenting it just didn't know how to present that asterisk in real life.
I would have thought that either, you know, base AirPods maybe, or some super cheap, highly ranking buds on Amazon would be the best-selling headphones. So, I mean, I guess I could believe it, but the point isn't necessarily if they're the number one headphones or not. The point that was interesting to me is that these are clearly very successful headphones.
Yeah, they definitely are. There's a reason why Apple and Beats doesn't just create like new versions of, like, they went from like Powerbeats to Powerbeats 1, 2, 3, from Powerbeats 1 to 2, 3, 4 to now Powerbeats Pro and Pro 2. They've created like the Beats Fit Buds, right, or whatever they're called, where they don't have like that over ear wing, but that little thingy that then basically attaches it inside your ear, right? And then they have like their over ear stuff and things like that, and it all still coexists despite Apple offering good to even great alternatives inside the AirPods market. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they are very popular, but I would be very shocked actually if they were the most popular.
Were $250 when they came out, so they must be at least pretty good. And so the hype has been real for the sequels, because the originals came out about 5 years ago. And so now that the 2s came out, and I've been using them for about a week now, I gotta say, I think these are going to continue to be some of the best selling headphones in the world, because they're actually really good. So let's just imagine for a second that they're right, and these are actually the number one best selling headphones in the world. That means that Beats took the best selling headphones in the world and added active noise cancellation and transparency mode and heart rate tracking, and made them smaller and lighter, with better battery life, with better sound, made them more comfortable, and put them all in a smaller case that also has more battery and USB Type-C and wireless charging, and all for the same price. That's a hell of a refresh to me. I feel
Yeah,
like
I would actually consider this, even if it has certain shortcomings, like it might not have the absolute best like audio quality ever. Like I would consider these like basically a perfect product, where the only thing that needs to change over time to address like shortcomings or other brands coming in and offering better products would be the price. And we've seen something like that with the original Powerbeats that dropped from like around 250 to now around 150. AirPods Pro 2 also launched at 250, now are like around 180, pretty regularly discounted. And that's because those are fantastic products that any company can keep selling for 2, 3, sometimes 4 years. And they don't even have to drop the price by half by the end, right? Drop it by like 30, 40, maybe even percent. Make sure you give them those devices some software updates, which Apple now is able to provide. And just make sure that the ecosystem keeps evolving around it. And I honestly don't think that these earbuds, or however you want to call them because of their specific shape, I don't think they will age basically at all in the next 3 years. Like, yeah, they might not become the very best anymore at certain things, especially when AirPods Pro 3 comes out, powered by the H3 chip, which will certainly improve active noise cancellation, transparency mode, features inside the Apple ecosystem, stuff like that, right? But these can just get a little bit cheaper, and you won't really care that something might be like 10, 15, even 20% better in certain ways, because you now get a better deal here and you get still the unique form factor, right? No, basically nobody else does stuff like this in the somewhat premium market anymore. Relay 964 joining, saying hi Mark, hi Relay. I apologize to anyone watching with all the technical hiccups. As I said, I will try addressing it, but I like the alternative right now would be to literally stop streaming, and I don't want to do that.
like Apple should be taking notes. To me, this is more
I disagree that Apple should be taking notes. Like AirPods Pro 2 are similarly improved versus AirPods Pro 1. It's just that AirPods Pro 1 were a better product for its day and its price than the original AirPods Pro, than the original Powerbeats Pro. So, and again, it's not Apple should be taking notes. It is an Apple device. And the reason why it can get a lot better in a lot of ways is because Apple has changed in a lot of ways, right? Powerbeats Pro 1 are powered by Lightning. Ever since then, Apple has moved away from Lightning to USB-C. This device now supports USB-C. Apple has more aggressively pushed for either full-on MagSafe or at least more wireless charging. These now have wireless charging. The best improvements for them for transparency mode and active noise cancellation do not just come from the inclusion of an Apple made and maintained processor, the H2, but they also benefit from years of the AirPods Pro 2 being on the market, which means Apple could have worked on their algorithms. The Beats team was able to use like Apple's acoustic chambers inside Apple Park and shit like that. So while I know that Beats is still somewhat a separate company from Apple, you bet your ass that the best parts of this and the reason why they can come without a price increase is because they benefit from Apple's, for one, internal resources, but also Apple's ability to scale stuff, right? They didn't require a custom chip. They didn't require getting a Qualcomm chip and then reworking your own algorithms and stuff like that for noise cancellation and transparency mode. So they work well on that chip. No, you just take a chip that is already like kind of best in class, and you benefit from all the data that already has with that chip on other hardware.
clearly than ever better than AirPods Pro.
Nope, those are different products. I dislike this idea. They are better. They will have some advantages because of their form factor. They will have some disadvantages. They will still be like heavier and a bit less comfortable than your average AirPods Pro experience. They will have better battery life simply for being like volumetrically larger. But yeah, like I to me, AirPods versus Powerbeats, those are very different products.
At more things than ever. So easily my favorite part of the Powerbeats Pro 2 is just how they're built and how they stay in my ears. So this was also true about the last ones, and it's true again.
Now, MKBHD is a professional athlete, right? Like he does work out by himself a lot in his regular life. Everything from golf to just running and whatever, but he does also train like kind of professionally, but like for his ultimate frisbee stuff. While I don't expect him to necessarily wear that stuff for professional workouts, you definitely know that Marquez does have the physique to give like a fitness focused earbud, like basically a good workout, right? Making it move around a lot, sweating a lot. So this is where his perspective is actually almost unique. Like I do assume that basically every tech YouTuber works out at least a little bit. But like Marquez is here very much almost uniquely positioned as also on the side a professional athlete to provide us with data. And you guys know I'm not a suck up to MKBHD. I disagree with him plenty on this channel, but this is a perspective where I really, really like what he has to say.
The rubber tips actually come in one extra size now too. So there's extra small through extra large. And then the new ear hook is nice and snug. But
yeah, the new ear hook is smaller. It has like a titanium alloy inside, so it is still very like elastic, basically. So it can jump back into its original shape, but it won't like, it is much less likely to break. As somebody who kind of broke one of his hooks on my Powerbeats 4 back in the day, obviously those were cheaper and less premium than the Powerbeats Pro Gen 1 that followed, but knowing that these are even better than the original Powerbeats Pro and they are smaller and more comfortable, that's fantastic.
Not too snug. It really feels natural and comfortable holding everything in place. Plus, they are 20% lighter than the last generation. I think if we're being honest, these became so popular because they are basically the de facto premium workout headphones.
Yep.
And so, depending on your workout, you're going to be moving your head around a lot or a little bit, and it's going to be important for these to stay in your ear. And yeah, these stay in my ear so well. And this is general.
Well, yeah, like they have basically a 0 chance of actually falling, right? They could fall out of your ear. Maybe you just don't vibe with the shape of the actual, you know, like the bud. But since they do have that ear hook, they are much, much more likely to actually stay attached to your head at the very
Really going to be true about anything with the hooks over the ears versus anything without the hooks over the ears. I know wingtips are decent for some people, but AirPods Pro...
It doesn't look like he has necessarily the ear shape for those little ear wings, right? Like that looks like it would be very uncomfy. Like you would have the bud here and then that wing would basically like press itself against it here. Like I'm not sure if his ear might be a little bit too flat for that. Which, I mean, that's great. He doesn't have big ears. That's pretty good for like an attractive head shape. Probably also a problem why AirPods might be falling out for him. The fact that his ears just are not very like deep outside, for lack of a better word.
Kind of fit in my ear well. These are a lock. And then what's different about the Beats headphones with hooks is, well, Apple owns Beats, so they've put the H2 chip in here, and they do all the Apple-y things. It still does the instant pairing thing on any iPhone. Still very easy to pair with any Android phone too, but you know, instantly showing up on every device in your iCloud account is very convenient for a lot of people. Adding noise cancellation is huge though. Now, I don't think you can sell a $250 pair of wireless premium earbuds and not have noise cancellation.
You benefit a little bit from the form factor where it's obviously like it covers like more of your ear. It depends how much you also want to shove the bud into your ear, like depending on the tip you use. Like one thing that AirPods Pro, for example, do very well, they have extremely comfortable ear tips, right? Because usually you have that little bud and then you have like a hard protrusion on top of it, and that protrusion connects with the ear tip. On AirPods Pro 2, you basically have a flat ending to the earbud, and then that protrusion is a soft part of the ear tip itself. So it's kind of like a reverse connection mechanism in comparison to what the others do, and that it was a big reason why AirPods Pro to me felt a lot more comfortable than any other tipped earbud I've ever used before. So I'm not actually sure. I think these use like a traditional design, so I do believe this will still be less comfortable than AirPods Pro. But if your focus really is the workout, and your workout is really strenuous enough to potentially drop your AirPods, it becomes a stress factor. You might just hold yourself back a little or whatever. Plus, these have a bit more battery life, which, again, if you're enabling noise cancellation during a workout, and especially now if you're also doing like potentially like heart tracking, like those are benefits that really pile up for this specific set of customers.
In 2025. So maybe they felt forced to add it, but either way, they've done a really good job with these. It's sampling the outside world 200 times per second and does a really good job canceling white noise, the sort of basic steady state stuff. I think some stuff like keyboard typing and basic dialogue or other random sounds still get through, but
yeah, that has to do again with the shape. It can like it's like not super deep into your ear. I think because you want still to like you would need to have like a way larger ear hook, but then it becomes less comfortable because of that. So basically it's all design is compromise, right? And if you made them larger just so you can shove them in deeper, now the case ends up being larger, everything ends up a little bit heavier, and I don't think that's worth any compromise, because fundamentally the audio quality was already good enough. People bought the original Powerbeats Pro despite the lack of noise cancellation. So even if noise cancellation is not perfect, it's still way, 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 way better than what we had before.
Once you have music playing, basically everything that's not the music fades completely away, which is the goal. Transparency mode is also really good. Not quite as good as AirPods Pro, which I think...
Yeah, again, this is actually a shape benefit. If you think about the AirPods, it actually is like the bud, right? What we see here, plus this part, like the stem. But this stem on the AirPods is not facing towards your eyes. It's facing downwards towards your mouth. And even those few extra millimeters of being directional towards your mouth is really a game changer for like microphone input and stuff like that. For like three-dimensionally or like... How do I explain it better? Like 3D is more for personalized spatial audios and stuff like that. But just the fact that AirPods, I'm thinking earpods because I am wearing those. Like because they face downwards, right? They have microphones like in your ears for like noise cancellation. Transparency mode obviously uses outside facing microphones. There are quite a few microphones actually. And because AirPods are able to collect all that data over a more interesting area, an area that gives you more different sounds, like potentially your own voice, it's just able to algorithmically deal with all of it better. Here, all you have is like stuff all around your ear directly, which isn't bad. Obviously, our own ears are quite good, but given that this is pretty size-limited hardware, AirPods are just like, they're just better positioned in a way.
Are the industry best, but this is closer than anything else has gotten for me.
Yeah.
In fact, overall assessment would be that noise cancellation is really good, but a smidge below AirPods Pro, and transparency mode is also really good, but a smidge below AirPods Pro.
Yeah.
So that makes sense because they all have the H2 chip in them. But then the sound character, just the way they sound, it's just overall exactly what you're looking for from workout headphones. I mean, take the Beats logo off of these and listen to them, and you'd find that they're objectively pretty good sounding. They're like an 8 out of 10 for sound quality. They're like AirPods plus a bit more.
And I think if they were ever to like push the envelope to like a 9 or 10 out of 10, I do believe that that would come with a price increase and potentially maybe even with a separate model, because giving, like, of course all tech gets cheaper, but truly premium audio quality will probably never become dirt cheap. Right now, granted, these are not dirt cheap devices, but they do have plenty of other stuff that you're paying for in $250, and you have a size limitation for everything from your bud that produces the sound, to how much battery you can fit in, to how many microphones you can fit in. So all of that design is a compromise. I wouldn't be surprised if by the time we get Powerbeats Pro 3, which will definitely be a smaller upgrade than this, now it will definitely improve both noise cancellation and transparency mode even further. But I would believe that the main differentiation point would actually be audio quality. And at that point, I could see those being like more like $280 or like $300, and then these just slide down the lineup and become like almost like a permanent fixture of it at $220 or $200 MSRP, with like a real market price closer to like $150 or $180.
More bass and a little more volume and energy. On a technical level, they are upgraded amplifiers. There is new acoustically transparent mesh and a slight change to the alignment of the drivers to better point directly into your ears. Plus, there's a new venting channel straight through the buds to relieve pressure and improve bass response. All of this stuff adds up to a really lively and fun and just good sounding pair of headphones. I'm not interested in a flat sound signature here. If I wanted that, I would get, an Audio-Technica set or something like that.
True.
This is just, I'm guessing if you're working out, you're listening to some energetic music, some hip hop, some pop, some electro, whatever you're into.
Political podcasts, that's kind of more my jam. And yeah, I do have to force myself to stay energized, but I usually don't have that much time in the day. So yeah, I just listen to whatever I want to listen, because otherwise I'll just never get to listen to those things.
And these sound great with all of that stuff. Now, another valid question, if these are only headphones, is would you fly with these? And
sure.
Yeah, I think you could. Again,
people have flown on airplanes without noise cancellation for decades. So yeah, of course you can fly with these.
It's going to be best with that solid state, steady noise. So an airplane sound, you put them in, you turn ANC on, and immediately drops it a lot. You could get better noise canceling out of certain other earbuds, but I find like having a hook on it and making sure it stays in my ear is even more important on a plane, because when they fall out, it's a huge pain in the ass. So yeah, I like these for flying. Oh, and also
Buddy probably flies first class. I doubt that he has like that little room to like drop quickly. But I mean, he's really tall, so maybe he still struggles.
H2 chip means personalized spatial audio as well, if you're into that. But these also have another feature that I haven't seen in any other earbuds before, and that is heart rate tracking. Now again, these are workout headphones, so that makes sense. I've just never seen that before. But the Powerbeats Pro 2 will do heart rate measuring.
By the way, I think one thing that I want to point out, now your ears are not very much the best place to monitor your heart rate. But again, blood does flow through them, so you still can. But I am just fascinated by the continued miniaturization of technology. Yes, I know that like heart rate monitors could have always been small. I mean, the stuff we use in the hospital around the finger, right? It's a clasp around the finger, but the actual sensor is very small right at the front. But the fact that this is now inside like a pair of headphones, and it's like three-dimensional, you have to understand it cannot even be that thick because it shares its space with so many other components here. So in comparison to something like the OG Apple Watch and how much space like heart rate trackers take up there, and relatively still how much space they even take up on the current Apple Watch like the Series 10, like this is definitely cool stuff. Maybe you lose some accuracy, maybe you lose some fallback, because if you can make the sensor cover a larger area, that will definitely like reduce your amount of errors that you could have. But that's still cool to have it.
Through this little sensor right here. They will update heart rate every 5 seconds with technology borrowed from the Apple Watch, parsing data from each earbud at once. And you can even pair the earbuds to gym equipment so that if you have like a treadmill that has a Bluetooth connection, you can have your heart rate from your earbuds show up there, just like you could with an Apple Watch. I think that is a really cool, convenient thing to add for headphones that you know that people mostly work out in. I wasn't really sure exactly what to make of how accurate exactly the data is going to be from them. I mean, it's still an optical sensor after all. I think what said the most to me is that if you also have an Apple Watch, the apps you use will default to the data from the Apple Watch. But if you don't, this is pretty cool. Now, the improvement with the buds is great, but that's only half the story. The other half is definitely the case. And all you can really ask for with a nice case is good battery life, charges easily, and pretty small. Check, and kind of check. Yeah. This case is not as small as AirPods or a lot of other really small earbuds that don't have ear hooks, but this case is about 33% smaller than the last generation, and it also fits more battery inside, about 3 full charges worth. It also added USB Type-C now, believe it or not, the last one was Lightning, and they also added wireless charging. It's a nice case, satisfying magnetic shutting mechanism. You can track it if you lose it.
It's a magnetic mechanism? No, it's a magnetic shutting mechanism for the case itself, because it didn't just click with the MagSafe charge.
With Find My, I think this is a great case for a gym bag, even if it's not tiny. Speaking of battery, though, the battery life just of the buds plus the case is really good. So I basically work out every day.
You benefit here from basically AirPods Pro-like hardware, but connected to like just a larger battery.
And using these headphones every single time I work out, I went a week without really thinking about battery life. Now, I did find it interesting that they seem to not quite drain at the exact same rate. It's not enough of a difference to raise alarm bells, but I found that curious. But here's some sick math on how this worked out.
Oh, he means between the left and the right bud. Well, that's interesting. When I pre-watched that review, I actually wasn't looking at the screen at that time, so I thought he meant versus like the previous generation. Which sounded like a weird complaint. This makes way more sense.
10-hour battery life on the buds without ANC on. Closer to 6 to 8 with ANC.
That could be, honestly, ANC related. Like, if you have noticeably different, like, ear shapes from left to right, which does happen. Again, I cannot tell you. I do not have 3D measurements of MKBHD's ears, but they might be having to do slightly different work. If one sits in very snugly and basically can do less ANC and just rely on the passive noise cancellation of just being very close shut in your ears, it might be that the other side has to work more. If it doesn't sit as nicely in there, moves around a little bit more, noise cancellation has to do a little bit more work. Maybe stuff like that could be to blame.
But let's just go 10. I wouldn't want to wear these for 10 hours straight anyway.
No.
But every time you put them back in the case, they charge back up to 100%. And the case can fully charge the buds 0 to 100 3 times. So if you do a 2-hour workout every single day with these buds on, you can go basically a month without thinking about battery. So that is...
Yeah, I mean, there is standby drain, like, but definitely like 2 weeks with the numbers we've been given should be very plausible. Now, it does depend on your exact workout schedule, and how loud you listen to music and how loud your gym is. Potentially, like a transparency mode, regardless of the volume, might have to work a little bit more overtime. But yeah, definitely seems like they're delivering solid battery life.
The fast charging also, I think, is my favorite bit. So if you somehow forget to charge the buds and leave them out of the case and they die, okay, you can drop them in the case for literally 5 minutes and get over an hour of listening time, just like that. So hey, here we are in 2025, and I'm out here basically recommending Beats. I'm recommending Beats that are expensive because they're not actually overpriced compared to what they get you for stuff.
Yeah, I think that was like the biggest change that Apple introduced to Beats. And it's unironically, it's value that comes from it comes from two things. First is a very basic business thing, which is from scaling, right? Apple's like the Beats brand was always good, but Apple's brand is better, so they can sell more, which allows them to potentially either reduce margins on individual sales because they will make that up in volume, or even more likely, they will be able to make their production processes a lot cheaper since they will recoup their cost for new builds building equipment and shit like that much sooner. Marketing becomes a smaller part of the overall budget. But secondly, the reason why the value is better is also simply like Apple's engineers and like the different approach. Like, I'm not saying the engineers working on Beats were previously not interested in having great audio quality, ANC, transparency mode, all those features, but they could have been lacking the money. And even more importantly, Beats used to be a lifestyle brand. So even if they had some magical audio quality, like tech behind the scenes, which they didn't, but let's presume, right? They still were able. Were still like in need of tuning it for like a very like hip hop focused audience back in the day. And no, hip hop focused audience is not like slang for black people, because white people, believe it or not, consume more hip hop. Not maybe not more per capita, but there are more white people in the West. And they listen to hip hop too. I do too. So yeah, and this is why like the tuning of Beats headphones, just like historically, was always kind of off, like by a little bit too much. Like, no, they weren't just opinionated, but they were very, very strongly opinionated. And now that they are more part of Apple, they can be more subdued, and they do have access to better hardware, data access to like what do consumers actually want, and yeah, so they are in a way better spot now, and I'm glad that, like, I mean, this is an incredibly positive review. Like, this is like a 9 out of 10 review. I think if this was like a $180 product, like this would probably be like a 10 out of 10 review for not just having good value, but having like mind-boggling value.
Competition. It's crazy. You know the memes of like comment sections that are like the downfall of X needs to be studied. Whatever
the downfall of X, like, you know, DX, like Twitter.
Beats is doing is basically the opposite of a downfall. You've heard me talk about Beats in the past. This should be studied too. These might be the best available earbuds for most people. I went back and looked at the...
By the way, this is like the Beats acquisition is also partially why I always get a little frustrated when people try to apply like Google or Microsoft logic to, or especially Facebook logic to acquisitions. Now, Facebook does make their acquired companies even more successful, but they do that by basically taking out all competition in the market. So that's completely horrible. Microsoft buys shit like LinkedIn to basically leave it as it was, or they buy Skype to hopefully make Teams look more attractive these days, but honestly didn't do much with them either. And then they buy stuff like Nokia for like Windows Phone, and that totally fails. And then Google, while their acquisitions have historically not been failures, like noticeably buying stuff like YouTube, for example, have been giant successes, but YouTube's internal track record of like having a lot of stuff in parallel, like, I don't need to tell you about the Google graveyard, about all the canceled projects, be it software or even hardware. So when, for example, Apple just this week fully acquired Pixelmator, right? They make great photo editing tools and stuff like that. I built all my thumbnails in their apps. And people were like, well, they will lose like the hunger of a small independent company. And I'm like, yeah, but do you understand that, like, with Apple's internal resources, data, right? Even if Apple gives them like 25% more resources and they lose like 10-15% of their internal drive, that still gives them like 10% more shit to work with. Like, I feel like people don't quite understand what it really means to have, like, it's not like Apple will give them all their billions, but in comparison to what they're working with prior, their resources are now close to limitless. And I'm just like always frustrated when people, like, if Apple were to go out and buy like, I don't know, like one of the Chinese brands right now, right? Maybe they buy out Realme from like the parent company, and they try to build it into like a cheaper brand, similar to how Powerbeats are a higher value brand these days than AirPods. technically, depending on how you look at it, right? I wouldn't see that as a positive because I'm like, Apple, really? You couldn't just give us an iPhone SE with just better components? You needed to create a sub brand that like might get like your sloppy seconds year down the line that works for like standalone accessories that don't do as much. But really with smartphones now you burden yourself with more software support. You basically bought up competition probably to like appease the Chinese Communist Party or whatever. Like I wouldn't support that. But whenever Apple makes smaller acquisitions, and in fact Beats by Dre remains Apple's largest acquisition at $3 billion, which is like several orders of a magnitude lower than some of the stuff we are witnessing. Like Microsoft for 70 billion bought Activision Blizzard King. OpenAI is trying to invest $100 billion in the company for all the AI shit and stuff like that. And Microsoft is involved, and everyone is trying to get in on some government funds for that too. I'm not a fan of these kinds of projects usually, and I'm certainly even less a fan of consolidation. But yeah, Apple has done a really good job with Beats by Dre. Way better than I expected back in the day.
Last gen Powerbeats Pro, and the price has gone way down. They're around $150 now, and according to my Amazon Price Tracker plugin, they've been around here for about the past month. Sounds like
but this will now result in a basically permanent price drop for the OGs.
a good deal, but I'll remind you, these charge via Lightning, and they do not have wireless charging. And this case feels ridiculous now. I actually can't recommend these anymore. There's always going to be cheaper alternatives, so I'll leave some of those down below. But the moral of the story here is these beats are good.
True.
These beats are really good. Well played, Dre.
These beats are made for walking. So this was a very positive and, in my opinion, actually a very good review by Marquez. Let's look into a review I agree with far less. Not as much because I cannot go in and disprove the individual findings of this specific reviewer, but I can definitely to a degree attack the way they are presenting their findings. Because I do sometimes, it so happens that you do have one or maybe even two nitpicks of a product, but instead of focusing your review on, the majority of the product. Now, depending on the nitpicks, just definitionally, nitpicks are small things, right? So maybe you disagree, maybe you actually think that those shortcomings are pretty big, so you focus on those. I'll definitely have a word with you if you chose the right things to point out as nitpicks, right? But then I feel like some people just do it all the time. They have almost no discernment for what is a small shortcoming versus what is a big one. And or even I don't know. I feel like when I look at certain people and they present individual facts, I'm like, did you counter test that with anything else? Because I do understand there's an idealized version of technology. In this case, we would be talking about something like noise cancellation, right? Ideally, we all know what we would want noise cancellation to be. It basically works perfect all the time at any given volume level, both outside and inside, no matter the type of sound around you, no matter whether it's a high-pitched or a low-pitched sound, no matter if it comes sudden or if it's a constant noise level, right? That's the kind of thing we want, but that tech simply does not exist, especially not for something that is also inherently limited in its passive noise cancellation. Sure, if you get giant over-ear headphones and you make them pretty massive too, even from the built-in material, yeah, you'll get pretty great noise cancellation, even if your active noise cancellation isn't that good. But that's you have to understand that certain products just cannot replicate that. Otherwise, you're not a tech reviewer. You're basically a science fiction author for tech.
Time for them.
So let's. If you didn't know yet, the reviewer I'm talking about is Dave 2D, and I have been actually very positive on Dave over my years of now on YouTube. I have used him as a very positive example, for example, of making pretty short and to the point reviews. But I do have to say, in recent history, some of his what previously felt like, oh, like the Shakespearean thing, right? Like brevity is the soul of wit or whatever, right? Like that felt applicable today, if I would argue, like 2 years ago. Now his brevity sometimes feels a little bit more like laziness. And you can correct me or disagree with me on this, but I really am not a fan of this review. Let's get started.
These are the newest wireless earbuds from Apple's Beats lineup, the Powerbeats Pro 2. And this is coming 6 years after the launch of the first iteration of this product. People have been waiting a very long time for them. And there's a whole bunch of new features. It's got better audio. It's got wireless charging.
Yeah, and by the way, one thing that also, beyond just all the improvements that have stacked up in all that time, one thing that also is very interesting, of course, that inflation has also stacked up in the meantime. So the fact we are getting like a very similar price point is actually quite cool.
Noise cancellation. It's got a heart rate sensor built right into the buds themselves. It's lighter, it's more comfortable, everything's new. However, despite all those amazing features, I find this thing surprisingly underwhelming. Okay, let's get into it. The main differentiating feature about the Powerbeats Pro lineup is that these have ear hooks. These are not common anymore. I think the world has moved to just like different shaped tips, but these have the hook, which allows it to have a very secure fit when you're wearing it for kind of rigorous physical activity. If you're working out or running or mountain biking or just doing like inverted aerial maneuvers, this hook will keep
yeah,
this
definitely
bud
for
securely
that.
in place. And also, these have physical control. So you have volume controls as well as a button to activate the different modes. And these volume control buttons and action buttons are present on both the left and right buds.
If something, by the way, ever gets me to switch from like AirPods to like something like a Powerbeats setup, that would be physical buttons. Because now I do like the physical buttons on AirPods Pro. They obviously have like those swipe things, and you can press or hold on that touch area. But I just wish there was at least one more extra button so I wouldn't have to choose in settings between like Siri functionality or switching between noise cancellation, transparency mode, and whatever, right? I just wish there was one more button or one more ability to click. And granted, that should actually be possible. Like I should be able to do double presses or something like that are disconnected from media controls, because I never like to jump to the next track with my AirPods. Like at least give me the option to configure that like double press to something different.
Themselves,
and again, you can work with double press or double click or like, so I am a little bit confused why that hasn't yet happened. You could also theoretically work with the difference between like long press and like long click, right? Or long touch and long press. So I'm just confused why AirPods don't give me more buttons in that one button, because I know the feature set would be there.
Meant to be like bent and wrapped around. They just go right over your ear and they just stay in this kind of shape and form, but they're very comfortable to wear. Now, the rubber tips that make the inner seal are definitely a harder rubber.
Okay, let me see, by the way.
On the Powerbeats Pro 2 than
he doesn't take it off. I wanted to see if they were like more like AirPods or more like basically every other headphone.
AirPods Pro 2. So this is Apple's like kind of regular flagship product, and this is just a much more softer rubber, but there's still...
By the way, that rubber allows you to use a larger size ear tip on AirPods Pro, because it's so soft, it basically just smooshes itself into your ear canal. And once it does that, it allows for better noise cancellation, because it makes for better passive noise cancellation.
I would say equal in comfort. It's just, I think the harder rubber is there to prevent just wear. I think this is like...
Yeah, I would definitely prefer the AirPods thing, but given that they are very much activity focused, they probably don't want them to wear out very quickly. They don't want people to like accuse them of like forcing you to buy like new ear tips way too quickly and stuff like that.
Oriented product, and there's like a lot more sweat and ickiness, so stronger rubber. Now, inside the package, when you get this, you do get 5 different sizes. So you get the one that's on there already, plus 4.
By the way, I've looked into this. These apparently don't come even with like a USB-C cable, so they just come with like your Powerbeats and then the tips. That's fascinating. Like, I know obviously they wouldn't come with like a charger in the box, but even back in the day, I actually think I have those. I think these are the ones from my Powerbeats 4. Like, this was a fast charge cable that came with it. It was USB-A to Lightning, so you can kind of date it accordingly. And it's very short, which is not bad actually for like headphones. And it's still it's the last lightning cable left in my apartment. So whenever somebody comes around to charge and they don't have an iPhone that also has wireless charging, because I do have like a Belkin MagSafe charger, I do have to give them this. And yeah, I also don't have my 12 watts charger anymore for USB-A. Now, granted, I do now have my Anchor. Where is it? It's on the other side. Doesn't matter. But like previously, before I got my Anchor, it also had one extra USB-A port on it. Like in the past, my last USB-A chargers were very old 5-watt chargers that came with my ancient iPhones back in the day, ranging from the 3GS all the way up to like which iPhone was the last one that I got that didn't have that still had like a charger inside? Well, definitely like the 6S. Yeah, that's just an anecdote from my personal life. Like, it's just funny because I was sorting out some cables when I came home and I just found those and I thought that was worth mentioning.
For other tips, and it's just to give a more precise fit for the user. And in terms of sound quality, I think the Apple AirPods Pro 2, at least for me, is like the gold standard of wireless earbud.
Which is funny because this is one thing where I will definitely never accuse Dave of being like an Apple hater or anything, but I feel like that's not really something you ever hear. And I know he doesn't claim to be an audiophile, but like when you listen to like snazzy labs like Quinn, he will shit on Apple's products occasionally for like bad audio quality or whatever. Unironically, not the Mac Mini though, because apparently for what it is, it does have a pretty good built-in speaker. But I just find it funny that like to him, AirPods Pro are the gold standard. They are to me too. I think they're very neutral while still having a nice bass. I think because I basically always listen in transparency mode or noise cancellation, the fact that these inputs are handled very well actually contributes to better audio quality, especially in transparency mode. Like in noise cancellation, they might not stand out way too much versus the competition, but usually once you introduce other sounds, it can really become a mess on other brands. Apple's transparency mode sometimes feels like magic. But obviously I know that technically they are earbuds with way better audio quality on like a scientific level than AirPods Pro 2.
Audio quality. The Powerbeats Pro 2, they don't sound as good, but they kind of sound as you would expect. It's a Beats product. The audio is just a little more playful, stronger bass, and more emphasized treble. And when I measure them, it's not like a flat studio profile. It's obviously shaped more like a V, but it's done with intent. Having just fatter bass and more pronounced trebles is something that people
But I wonder, like, is that like, because this doesn't look like a hardware shortcoming. This looks like a tuning issue. Like, did you like change any settings? Because you can in like the Beats app.
intent. Having just fatter bass and more pronounced trebles.
Like, they
is
offer
something that
more
people actually
customization
see.
than
I actually like the
AirPods.
sound. It's just that's what they're going for. It's very on brand for Beats.
This is being recorded from the mic of the Powerbeats Pro 2. I think they sound okay, nothing special. And this is the mic quality on Apple's AirPod Pro 2.
I think what you can immediately hear is that benefit of like the stem facing more towards your mouth. So to me, AirPods do sound better here, but by maybe like 5%. It's not too game changing.
sound very similar. I don't think I'd be able to choose a winner.
There's also slightly more echo in the AirPods, but I do believe that they more than make up for that.
There's also Apple's H2 chip in here. So that handles the active noise cancellation. It also handles transparency mode. So you can have it on. You can hear your environments. If you're running, you can hear cars and stuff. It also handles spatial audio, so for movies and shows. But the big thing really is that active noise cancellation, because that was the feature that the owners of the first one really wanted, and it's finally here. Now, ANC on this product is a mixed bag. For sounds that are just like environmental, I want to call it white noise, but like a steady, constant background sound. So like a treadmill that's going, or like an air conditioner, or if you're on a plane, this product handles it pretty well. So I think Apple's AirPod Pro 2 handles it particularly well. If this was a 10 on like the scale of how well it handles that type of noise cancellation, this would be like...
By the way, this is why I do I find it fascinating. This is why I don't like saying somebody's like anti-Apple bias. Usually, if they are, it will be pretty clear. Like even LTT has a ton of employees internally who like use Apple tech and shit like that. But like, if you have like your Louis Rossmann like presenter, you definitely won't hear too many good words about Apple. Just saying. But here, I find it fascinating that he is not shitting on Powerbeats Pro. He is criticizing them. But at every step, the main beneficiary from the criticism towards Beats is Apple, the owner of Beats, because Apple makes AirPods.
I'd say an 8. Maybe an 8.5. Let's say 8. But when it comes to more random noises, so like a clap or a sudden bang. So I was at the gym with these things on, and you could hear people dropping weights and just machines clanking. That type of sound, that random sound, is handled really poorly.
That kind of sound, you do have to like bite in the sour apple though, and you have to put in larger ear tips that actually block the noise from coming into your ear canal. This is not something that is even like, when you consider realistically how like noise cancellation currently works, like it's not really something you can solve like fully. Like what, you can use denser material for the product itself. You can make the like anti-noise way louder, but all of those things come with compromises to weight, power consumption, things like that. So yeah, like not saying that these are as good as they can get. I'm pretty sure they might have some shortcomings here, but I do find it fascinating. Out of every review that I have read or watched on this, he's unmistakably the most negative one
On this device. And if I'm being honest, very disappointed, because this has the same H2 chip as what we see in Apple's AirPod Pro 2. And this
by the way, there might also be some like legitimate stuff here. Like Powerbeats Pro 2 are supposed to be getting a day one firmware update. Maybe that one wasn't available yet to reviewers. Maybe it actually got better or whatever. Like to quote from like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, she turned me into a newt. I got better.
thing had amazing noise cancellation capabilities. How does this newer product not do it as good? Now, the thing that kills me is that Apple has all the patents, all the technology, all the IPs to make this thing the best of the best in terms of ANC.
I feel like he almost bought into like a conspiracy theory for why this isn't exactly like AirPods, even though it is still being made by a different team. It just gets to benefit from like what Apple has done. So yeah, like it might just not be as perfectly integrated as AirPods.
Right? And it's a fitness product. Those are the users that would want it the most. People going to the gym.
I disagree. I usually need noise cancellation more at just at the street for like the loud volumes of a large city, because usually I'll only have one earbud in. So if I actually, like, I don't want to run around fully isolated with two, and I also want to still speak to people without having to fiddle around with transparency mode and whatever. So I'll just keep noise cancellation enabled on one AirPod, and that solves basically all my problems.
People running on
Even at the gym, I don't usually wear two AirPods at the same time. I do prefer hearing my environments. It just makes me feel less claustrophobic.
streets. You just want to like tune out the world. This, in my mind, should have the best ANC, but it doesn't, unfortunately. Now, the other feature I want to talk about, the last big one, is the heart rate sensor. So it's an optical heart rate sensor. It's present on both the left and right bud, and it's located on the bottom of each bud, and these things shine a light that presses right into this part of your ear. Now, it's an optical sensor, so it shoots a very bright green light that you actually can see when it's in use.
Yeah,
the heart rate
it's
sensor
similar
seemed
to
fairly
how
accurate
Apple
when I
Watch
compared it
does
with
it.
the polar chest strap. It was off by like 1 or 2 BPM, so I'd say that's pretty good. But the thing I really dislike about this whole heart rate sensor thing built in here is that it is very difficult to even check your heart rate. So I have to launch an app, click around on a few things in order to just see that heart rate. So right now I ran.
Well, yeah, like they do activate it for workouts. This is not for all day heart rate tracking. They don't have the battery life for that. It also would make you extremely vulnerable to like taking off your earbuds and immediately losing your data, which you will, because for a lot of work you cannot wear them. Well, the Apple Watch you can still put on. These are not designed as a constant health tracker the same way as the Apple Watch is.
Ran a fitness app, and obviously I'm not working out, but and just the number right there, 77 beats per minute. So there's just so much friction to be able to do that. Like I can't just like.
Do you need to see your heartbeat right there? Like, do you like? You understand that that data is more useful for your workout app, unless you have like tachycardia or like whatever kind of heart problem you might have. Like what are you doing with your like I work out, I never look at my Apple Watch to check my heart rate. Like sure, for some like intensive workouts where I'm pushing the limit and where I specifically try to also do stuff for my heart health, right? But that's where you get a separate product that does have better sensors, larger sensors that are put in a better position. Yeah, like I feel like people misunderstand the presence of hardware with the presence of functionality, which is that just because two products might have the same hardware for a specific feature does not mean both products are designed to do the exact same thing.
Be listening to music, walking down the street, and be like, "Hey, what's my heart rate?" Pick up my phone. And
Why?
look, I have to do the.
Dude, are you sick? Like, if you like, and I'm not saying that in a negative, disparaging way. If you are sick, you should check your heart rate, but you should do that with a more dedicated product for it. Don't rely on Powerbeats that were just introduced 2 minutes ago and pretend like it's an issue that they are integrating a feature that almost nobody else has in a way that you might not be like perfectly that is different from what you're used to with your Apple Watch.
The whole app launch and just go around in the app. And it's also only supported by a handful of apps right now. So this to me feels so unlike an Apple product.
Wait, no, you can. Wait, Apple's workouts do support this.
Devices and the whole ecosystem is usually really frictionless. But this.
What is friction? Where's the friction here? The friction is about you wanting a specific set of data right away rather than just letting it be in the health app and having your iPhone keep analyzing your heart rate data. Like, I feel like you're making up issues here. And again, this is not like, I feel like you can, the problem is, I feel like you can present real criticisms in a way that, or even small criticisms, I want to say, in a way that actually is not just productive, because that sounds cliche. Mr. George Best joining the stream. Hello, brother. Welcome. But I feel like you can present certain criticism in a way that actually is interesting. Right? Here you're just sounding exasperated of like, there is friction. It doesn't give me my heartbeat in like 2 seconds. I'm like, yeah, it's like, it doesn't have a screen like the Apple Watch. And by the way, I'm pretty sure that if a workout is starting on your home screen, just like on your iPhone, wait, can you, how would that work even? Why would you? I still don't get it what he exactly wants, because this device does not have like control over like your gym equipment or even your phone. Like it just gives the phone more data to later work with. I'm so confused about his exact point. Like, yeah, this is a very different product than the Apple Watch. It cannot give you the same instantaneous thing as the Apple Watch, which does have its own screen and is in a better position for you to actually look at.
As apps and like sign-ins into third-party apps to be able to make.
Because you also said I'm walking around, I want to track my heart rate. That I actually understand. Now, the way you would do that is you wouldn't want like regular heart rate tracking, but let's say, okay, I'll actually paraphrase it in a way that might be actually constructive for Apple. Apple, give us a way to like have the Powerbeats measure your heart rate at least like every 15 minutes, at least once. Now that wouldn't be very useful data, unfortunately. And by once, I mean like for a minute. Maybe that, and then maybe give us a shortcut in Control Center so you can trigger your heart rate monitoring right then and there, and then it shows up maybe in the dynamic island or like as a live activity. But I'm just so confused because this is not a like a long-term health product. It's literally designed to, if you don't have an Apple Watch, to track your heart rate during workouts, not during your everyday. That would just consume too much battery life, which result in a compromised product. Nor does it have the screen, which I mean, I'm repeating myself at this point, but like when I look at his face, it just makes me so angry, like how exasperated he is by it not doing the exact same thing as the Apple Watch. Angelica saying hello to everyone. She's glad to be here. I'm glad to have you here. Thank you all guys for joining. I know my streams are a little irregular. I know we've all been kind of looking towards the iPhone SE4, but I do believe that, hey, at least we get more time to cover the Powerbeats Pro.
I don't know. It just feels superfluous considering how like present smartwatches and
I mean, yeah, but you're not paying extra for it. That's the entire point. Like by the way, I have argued the same thing. I have said that health tracking through earbuds should not be a big focus. But if it costs them like $5 to integrate those sensors, they take up almost no space at this point. Like, you can just turn it freaking off and benefit from better battery life. And you think, oh, in theory, I could have paid Apple like $10 less because they could have saved like $5 in production. That's not really something, like, just forget it. You're not forced to use every feature. Like with the Pixel, for example, like Pixel owners complain that the Pixel 9 Pro, like, it does have its temperature sensor, right? And people were saying, oh, it doesn't do that or it doesn't do that. Then Google added some features. They basically allowed you to use it more freely. It's still not like an FCC, like, super certified thing. No, what is the Federal Health Committee? I have no idea. FCC is like Federal Commission of Commerce in the US. I always forget what the abbreviation stand for. But like, it's basically not like a super agency verified health feature. But you can use it, right? And you could argue, well, Google could have taken it out. But it's like such a small thing, that temperature sensor, and it adds so little cost. Yeah, if I were Google, I wouldn't have put it in. But if I'm a consumer, I'm just, oh, it's a feature I'm not really using that much. So, and again, you should have that perspective. Every product will have individual features, be they in software or in hardware, whether it's internal resources being wasted at that point, in your opinion, on maintaining a software feature, or whether it's literal like hardware going into the product and money. Like, yeah, you'll have to live that you won't utilize all of it.
Fitness trackers are for anybody who cares about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. That's an entry point for somebody who might not be super health focused. This will help people upsell potentially on an Apple Watch. It's like, oh, this thing records like my heart rate. oh, if I get the Apple Watch, it records it throughout the day. It has a tracking for like super fast or super low pulse. It can even have like ECG stuff. It can track my oxygen level and whatever. Like, yeah, of course. That's why it's there. It's a little bit of an upsell.
And one other thing, when you are monitoring your heart rate with these buds, it drains battery a lot faster.
Oh, and now you wonder why it isn't turned on for the everyday life, and why the Apple Watch takes over if you have one.
A test where I did 2 hours of heart rate tracking versus
Oh,
2 hours.
the internal inconsistency is just like, it's not hypocrisy, because it's not like he's lying to himself or to us here or whatever. It's just like, I feel like he didn't think it through, and he was like, oh, it's not a feature that is necessary, right? Which is not a bad conclusion. Like, for example, the way I would phrase the heart rate monitoring, I would say, it's good that it's here, because it's always better to have some access to data like this, because not everyone does have an Apple Watch. You might forget your Apple Watch, you might break it or whatever, right? And it might teach you about certain about certain health stuff before you get like a smartwatch or whatever. But I feel like you do need to have like the mental strength to just say, it's a nice thing to have, but please don't buy this device because it has it. You will probably be better off if you actually care about it with an actual smartwatch. And if you have an actual like medical condition, like arrhythmia or whatever, right? Please actually work with like your physician to know, is there like dedicated hardware to track it? Might I need like a pacemaker or whatever? So yeah, that's what you should be saying, not like this weird exasperation about like why this feature isn't front and center, because yes, it's like an auxiliary small thing
of just audio listening, and it's a really significant difference.
Yeah.
You can also connect it to Bluetooth-enabled gym equipment like treadmills and ellipticals. The new case is lighter and smaller than
which he obviously didn't test, because that would obviously improve your experience with that heart rate monitoring, because now you could see it potentially on the screen of your workout device.
previous generation, but it's still a fairly chonky case, especially
It's
compared
really not. Like, the problem is like, yeah, it might be chonky a bit in comparison to the rest, but you do have to account for its form factor.
to like the regular AirPods Pro cases. And it has USB-C charging, which is nice to see, and also supports wireless charging. The Powerbeats Pro 2 has a wicked long battery life. This thing has 10 hours of battery life per charge and up to 45 hours if you include the power reserve that's in the case. And this new case and charging.
This is why, by the way, they can afford to like drain your battery faster with heart rate monitoring.
System solves what I think was the biggest issue I had with the original Powerbeats. It's that you can charge this so easily now. So you can just casually drop it in and it just charges. You can even hold this thing upside down and it'll just charge because the magnets are strong and it's just way better than the charging system of the old one. That one was so finicky and you just had to like jostle it around to make it work, but they fixed that. Now, there's a few negatives to this product. So the first thing that I talked about was the ANC not being strong enough. The second thing I think is that the heart rate sensor is not nearly as useful as I would want it to be. And I
But
think
again, you already know why it isn't. It's a first generation integration. It's a nice to have thing. It's in a product that, despite years of inflation and a multitude of hardware improvements, is not more expensive than the previous generation. Yeah, I just feel like there's a loss of reality where, like, for example, with the ANC thing, I'm totally fine with the, like, I am a little bit skeptical whether or not you have actually compared it to similar products in the gym, right? Because if your only comparison is AirPods, well, now you're basically leaving people with like Apple versus Apple, which I don't think is really the vibe of your channel. I think you should still try to present like, oh, this is how well the Sonys do active noise cancellation. This is how well the Bose more fitness-focused stuff does noise cancellation, right? Like, I feel like if you are willing to provide like the kind of like scientific like frequency response charge that you have shown here. Where was it? Here. Right. I feel like if you're gonna do this, but you're not actually going to compare Powerbeats Pro to anything else other than AirPods Pro 2. Honestly, even as like an Apple fan myself, who probably would only be considering one of those two products, even to me that kind of seems lackluster, because I would be like, well, but there's plenty of alternatives, like Sony's like is there smaller versions also called XM5s or whatever? Sony's branding is absolutely terrible for earbuds, but I'm just or for headphones in general. But I'm just saying, if you're gonna try to be all scientific about it, please give me data about like how well does ANC perform on other earbuds as well.
As I would want it to be, and I think it's no fault of the product itself. I just think it's the idea of it. It's like, how many people are really using something like that in 2025? But the biggest thing for me is the price point.
Really? The price point for a product with an almost unique form factor at this point? Do you not understand how the market works?
Is $250 US.
Also, by the way, Beats products go on sale relatively quickly. Like, I remember when the original Powerbeats came out, they were like discounted by $30 or $20 to $30 almost like a week later. So yes, you might pay like the early adopters price, but you could wait a month and save like a solid 10%.
And that's what the original one launched for, but this is 6 years later.
Yeah, this is 6 years later with a ton of inflation and a ton of improvement, and with the market actually having fewer similarly form factored alternatives.
The market is so much more competitive in the wireless earbud.
I mean, but why not tell us how these things actually compare in sound quality, ANC quality, transparency mode, microphones, real world battery life, rather than just the advertised numbers? How well each of those work for workouts, right? Because that's the main, like Jabra Elite 8 Active. Like, just from the name, I'm just gonna judge that Jabra Elite 8 Active was the name. Jesus, what a name. Yeah, it actually is. Right, so these are just earbuds. So they have nothing to do with direct competition. They don't even have like an internal ear hook. So, like, again, these might be like maybe they have like some water and dust resistance. Yeah, it says like they're dust and water resistant and sweat resistance. Right, that's their call to fame as an active thing, not because they actually are as secure if a fit. And then looking at the other thing, the Soundcore X20, I don't think those are even that much of an workout focused thing. I think those are just cheaper. Soundcore X20. Oh, oh no, those. Ah, right. This is the. Okay, so you do have one. So now that you actually have a pair that does compete in that specific space, then why didn't you compare it, right? You just mentioned the price and the existence of the product, but not actually like how did they compare in sound quality, in transparency mode, in ANC mode, and whatever. Riveting tail chip Apple TV Plus app for Android was announced, by the way. Oh, really? That's actually pretty cool. I wholeheartedly support that. Let me look at that quickly. 95 Mac. To upload unsold Apple Vision Pro headsets. iPhone users. Apple releasing Apple TV Plus app for Android smartphones soon. I 100% support this. I think it's ludicrous to have any kind of exclusivity on stuff like this. Like, I do support, for example, like game exclusivity for games based on consoles versus PC, based on individual console versus another brand. But for stuff like music and TV shows, movies, stuff that does not run natively on device, I mean, yeah, technically you can download the file, but you know what I mean. Like a basic H.264 or H.265 accelerator, to me, is not the same thing as like making sure a game runs on your graphics API, making sure that the engine is properly optimized and whatever, right? I fully support like the Apple Music app being there, the Apple TV Plus app. iCloud is a little bit more different because iCloud still manages the stuff that you then want to put on your device. So, but even then, if Apple had like a very basic iCloud manager on Android, the way they have it on Windows, and one that also allows for like password integration on Android, I would have zero problems with that. I wouldn't necessarily maybe want, for example, for like the European Union to make all these mandates, but it's definitely a cool thing. So very glad Apple TV Plus has been consistently making some of my favorite shows in recent memories. Silo, Severance, Mythic Quest. That show that has a completely different German name. This is why I don't remember it in English. About the guy traveling through parallel worlds. That was a great science fiction show. Yeah, like Apple TV Plus has just been delivering and delivering. And even something like Prehistoric Planet, right? That shit just was so good. The budget that they had was so extreme, so much better even than any other high production like BBC similar thing that I've ever seen. So yeah, like Apple TV Plus, in my opinion, is by far the best subscription service right now. Maybe not if you're gonna wanna go to a subscription service to like watch The Office for the 5 billionth time, but if you actually want to check out something new, and even like Apple Music, for example, versus Spotify, you're paying the same amount of money, but like artists are being paid literally twice as much per click versus what they're being paid on Spotify. So I feel like if you actually want to support like artists versus big companies, unironically, it's better to go to the biggest company because they are doing a better job of it, at least right now. Who knows? Apple might become drunk with power and start turning out shit, but it hasn't yet happened. So let's finish this. So we found all of those. The Soundcore X20 did surprise me the most. I knew that there was like some designs with ear hooks, but I'm really surprised that they're just called the X20. Between those two, I would have almost bet that this would be the one with the ear hooks.
Space. There are so many good fitness-focused wireless earbuds that are like $100 cheaper than this, if not more. So you have to ask yourself, is that
yeah, but did you test it? Did you test it to provide us an actual understanding of whether or not the value could be there? Because something being cheaper does not necessarily make it higher value.
Sensor really worth that price premium that they're demanding? And I think for most people, it really isn't. It's just so many good options now. But there you have it. That's
So this is what I mean by lazy, by the way, which is like you brought up those two products. Okay, so maybe you did not have them for that review, but I doubt that you will specifically like make standalone video for those earbuds. And again, you do provide like these graphs for like frequency response for two products. And like, I'm pretty sure that you definitely have more earbuds, even if you might not have those fitness focused ones. You definitely would have like at least the Sonys and the Bose. So yeah. MKBHD, in my opinion, did a far better job, far better actual like insight into his experience with it, rather than like wake. that was weird English on my part. Rather than vague comparisons with like stuff that you cannot really bring up like your own experience with. So yeah, definitely much more of a fan of MKBHD in general, but in this case specifically of this review versus that of Dave. Hopefully Dave, I don't know, maybe he has not gotten worse. Maybe it's just my specific impression. Try not to shit on that guy. He obviously puts a lot of work in what he does. I mean, definitely way more than I do in my YouTube channel. I do put my work in somewhere else in my life. But yeah, I just wanted to present those kind of like as counter narratives, because I feel like if you ever watch only one thing, like this kind of sounds like a 6.5, maybe a 7 out of 10 review by the end, at least if you consider value, maybe more like a 7.5 and 8 out of 10 review if you don't consider value, while Marquez's review was like a 9 to like 9.5 almost. So, and across the boards, like Dave was like basically saying these are inferior to Apple AirPods, while in the very title Marquez says still better than AirPods. So that was just a very, very different perspective that I wanted to provide for you guys. Yeah, but I think that's about it. I mean, this is the latest thing that's coming out. This is coming from Mark Gurman. Apple plans to release an Apple TV Plus Android app as soon as today. Okay, so soon literally means super soon. So if I stream tomorrow or on Friday, it will depend if something meaningful launches tomorrow. Of course, I'll integrate that into my coverage. So thank you, Riveting Tail Chap, for actually letting me know. I know you guys listen to me unironically at the gym and stuff like that. So even though I love having a lively live chat, as I usually call it, I do understand that you guys also have your stuff to do. So even if you just listen, that's very much appreciated. And yeah, there is like a Minchi Kuo thing about like Apple's robots, both humanoid and non-humanoid being in development. We did cover that Apple had like that like Pixar like lamp as like an early white paper they wanted to present on robotics. But yeah, any real commercial product not coming until 2028 or later. Going by quote timelines, I would probably say it's 2030. And I mean, it could even mean that, right? If it goes into like production late 2028, and maybe Apple keeps refining the production process throughout 2029, it could then go on sale in 2030, and Quo would have still be technically correct, which is always the best kind of correct. Guys, we've been streaming for almost 2 hours. Thanks to you, I found some energy. I've pushed through my headaches. They actually got a little bit better. Now I'll try to catch a few hours of sleep before the state of play from PlayStation. After, I'm not going to react to it live on this channel because I do believe there are way better people at covering this. And I also believe that you guys are less interested in it. And I do believe that I do have way more fun just watching it by myself. While with Apple News, I actually do enjoy reacting to all of it together with you. So wish you all, of course, a nice evening. Hopefully we'll see each other either tomorrow or on Friday. We'll let you know, and you will be able to guess depending on if we get something like the iPhone SE or maybe like a new Apple Vision Pro as a surprise reveal. Who knows? Because at that point, my work days tomorrow and on Friday are not too long, so I'll be quickly running home, and then without any food or water, just jumping at the table and reacting with you guys. So thank you all so much. This is so much fun whenever you're here, whenever you are contributing. As always, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it out with anybody who you think might enjoy it. Comment. Don't just comment live, comment also afterwards. That helps tremendously with the algorithm. Also, become a channel member if you want to. Shout out to Angelica, Steve, and Max Maximus, who are MarkTech Pro Max supporters right here on YouTube. Or whenever you catch me live, you can leave a super chat or a super sticker right here in the live chat. I'll be guaranteed to read out your message. You can send a small donation. It all gets reinvested right back into the channel. And as always, let me know what you would like to see me cover next. Thank you so much for everything. I'll see you guys next time. This is MarkTech, tuning out.